So a few years ago, I was watching ESPN, not during prime time, and it was a tennis match that was played out in California. The unusual thing was that the matches were organized by decade. So you had 60-year-olds playing against each other, 70-year-olds, 80, and there was even a singles match between a 90 and a 93-year-old. And it was great to watch the two of them. They were moving and hitting the ball pretty well. And in the crowd was in the hundreds, several hundred people watching them, cheering them on. And so as I watched, the 90-year-old, that is the young one, hit a passing shot down the line for a winner. The 93-year-old watches the ball go by and then walked rather slowly over to the line judge, asked for the microphone, and then looking up at the now very silent audience, merely said, "Oh, to be 90 again." So we just heard a reading from Exodus 17, a beloved story near the middle of the entire Exodus chronicle, in which the children of Israel are wandering in the wilderness and they begin complaining because they're thirsty. Now, this is not said in the text, but it's understandable. If you're wandering in a desert, as you were with their children, their elderly, their livestock, their baggage, yes, you get thirsty. So Moses strikes the rock at Horeb with his staff, out comes water, and they are saved once again. And this story works on a number of levels. It works as a basic narrative in that you have a really strong bad guy, the antagonist in the person of Pharaoh, and his army chasing after the Israelites. And you have a really good guy in the person of Moses. He's powerful. He's got great connections. It's a compelling saga that holds your attention to see what happens to the people. Now, this story also works at a magical level. Supernatural, mysterious things are going on. Moses' staff parted the sea at the beginning of the Exodus, and it will be used to save the people from poisonous snakes later on. You might envision Charlton Heston standing there with the flowing robes, or you might envision Gandalf saving the fellowship one more time. You shall not. Well, I'm going to stop at this point. I can't do it justice. I'm sorry, I had to try that. But I'd ask you this morning to go down yet one more layer to the archetypal level in this story, because there's some deep symbolism going on. The opposites of desert, wilderness, and water. The desert is hard, dry, unforgiving, and can be deadly. Traveling through the desert is not just burdensome, it can be fatal. Water is crucial. Water symbolizes the opposite of softness and life and refreshment and coolness and growth, all made possible in this unforgiving environment of a desert. So coming into this archetypal setting, the travelers encounter the danger of the dry desert and the need for water. And in the context of this story, we get a take-home message. And it's this, that God sees their predicament, God hears their complaint, and God cares. The take-home message is that God can solve any problem If you're a transient, displaced people, unarmed, burdened with baggage, cattle, elderly, and children, and you're fleeing an army that's on horseback, that has chariots, you're in trouble. You're in a pickle. Yet in this story, God saw, heard, cared, and delivered them, saved them by parting the sea, and now they're in the desert in trouble again, and God sees, hears, cares, and delivers them again. Moses hits that rock with his staff, and the water comes out miraculously. That take-home message is pretty strong. God sees, hears, cares, and delivers. But hold on a minute. Is that take-home message really true? Is it believable? Are you convinced? Are you persuaded so far that God solves such problems? I ask you this because a lot of people are perfectly satisfied with this theology. If you pray hard enough, you believe enough, you sacrifice enough, God will do God's things. I'm not satisfied with that theology, and I suggest you not be satisfied with it either. Let me give you a couple of examples that have informed my theology. Both come from my years of ministry. Both are true, with enough details changed to preserve anonymity. What about the parents of a teenager who seems hell-bent on trouble? We've all maybe known this kind of teenager. Some kids are like that, rebellious and anti-authority to their very core. Much more interested in drugs, sex, and alcohol than studying or getting ready for college. Totally opposed to a job, wholly against any form of delayed gratification. The parents are worried. They're really worried. Deep inside, they're not sure that this kid is going to be okay. The family eventually moves away, but I kept in contact with them a little bit. I learned that he finally went to jail, and then just about 2 years after that, I Googled his name and found only his obituary. Or consider the case of a family with a second marriage. A man marries young, but the marriage only lasts a couple years, and then after the divorce, he meets a new person. They fall in love and are happily married for over 35 years. The husband has a sudden heart attack and is gone before anybody knew what happened. After the funeral, when the second wife starts to deal with all the legal and financial stuff of having lost her husband, she discovers that he never changed his will. This is one of those old-fashioned families where the house was completely in his name, both cars the same, the investment accounts, the retirement accounts, in all of them, the first wife is the beneficiary. A phone call is made, and the first wife from over 35 years ago is found and informed that she has inherited quite a bit. Believe it or not, I've known 2 of these scenarios. The bereaved spouses experience a profound sadness and an anger that's almost indescribable. Now, think about these 2 stories, these 2 examples. The parents of the hell-bent teenager and the 2 bereaved and now bereft second wives. Do you tell these people the story about Moses striking the rock in the wilderness and out comes the water? Do you tell them that God can solve any problem? Would you look them in the eye and say, God sees, hears, cares, and delivers? What would be their response to you? And so now it looks like I've painted myself into a corner. Which is it? God sees, hears, cares, and can solve any problem? Or does there really exist inherent sadness, bitterness, and anger in our world? In the Exodus story, God sees, hears, cares, and delivers. In my pastoral experience, there are people who think otherwise. So now, relative to this predicament, I'd like to read you a story. It's a very simple story, Zen in nature, one of the deepest stories I've ever found. And like Hope's story, it is also my daughter's favorite. It's titled The Parable of the Strawberry. It's only 2 paragraphs. A man was wandering in the wilderness when a tiger appeared and began to chase him. Panicked, the man fled and came to the edge of a cliff with this ferocious tiger on his heels. Spotting a thorny vine rooted on a rock, he swung himself down over the chasm. Above, the tiger roared and pawed at the rock. And then, looking down, he saw the gaping jaws of a second tiger pacing below him. Apparently, these 2 worked as a team, and he didn't know it. Looking up at the first tiger, looking down at the second, the man noticed suddenly a white mouse and a black mouse that had appeared and had begun to gnaw away at the vine. But the man did not care. He no longer paid attention to the 2 tigers or the 2 mice, for he had found a plump red strawberry growing on the face of the cliff. Holding on to the vine with one hand, he plucked the fruit with the other and popped it into his dry mouth. Oh, how sweet it was. And that's the end of the story. I came across it in a Zen children's book. It's also a pop-up book. You open and close the page, and you can see the man on the vine with the tiger below jumping up and the tiger above trying to reach down to get him. The movement in the pop-up book adds to the tension, I believe, for the kids. It's an ancient story, every bit as old as Moses striking the rock. But there's a classic interpretation of it. The first tiger represents the problems of your youth, of your childhood, of your past. For example, when you had a crush on one of the other students in class and your heart got broken for the very first time. Or perhaps if you were at all like me, I was a mouthy kid in school and got myself into trouble. I got myself beat up. I was sent to detention or to the principal's office multiple times in my illustrious school career. The tiger below, into whose jaws the man will fall, represents the problems of your old age. Feebleness, failing memory, all sorts of ways in which your body begins to let you down. Not always golden years for some elderly people. And then the 2 mice, the one white and one black, there's something typically Zen about a story in that the white mouse represents, and I'm going to use air quotes here, the good things that happen to you. But the good things that happen in the Zen tradition always aren't so good. For example, a man gets a promotion and a raise. That's good, right? And now he is further entrapped in a job that's not so good for him. But with the promotion and the raise, it's all the more difficult to leave that job and find something more suitable for himself. The black mouse represents the bad things that happen in our lives, but again, bad might not necessarily be so bad. So what's bad and good isn't always clear in the Zen tradition. What I think the story is trying to say is that hanging on that vine is the predicament of every human being. And for every single one of us, without exception, in front of our face is a strawberry. There's no interpretation for the strawberry because what it means is what it means to you. The strawberry represents the desire of your heart, the longing of your soul. You have to decide what the strawberry means so that it comes down to focus. Where do we place our attention? Do we concentrate on our problems? Do we allow our consciousness to be dominated by the negativity that we all experience? Do we nurture our victim mentality? Or do we focus our consciousness upon the kindness, the gratitude, the graciousness, the joy, and the love of our lives? Those children of Israel wandering in the wilderness, they were definitely distracted by the tigers and the mice, complaining as they went and not seeing the larger picture of their archetypal freedom, their story that would be told for generations, even millennia. All of us can be distracted by our perils. The two tigers and the two mice are the common lot of humanity, the collective fate, the shared experience of all humanity. Oh, to be 90 again. He didn't care about losing a point on national television. He didn't even care about his old age, but rather he joked about it. What he did care about was bringing laughter to hundreds of people. Strawberries are the shared experience of humanity also. May it be so. And our next hymn is number 108.